Thank you. Welcome to Resources Board this evening, 24th of January. We've got our agenda item 1, the evacuation procedure. Obviously, we would exit by our nearest exit, and our senior officer today is Sue. So she would be conducting the register in the Woolpack Way car park. But on hearing the evacuate signal, please carry out the following. Exit the building by your nearest and safest exit. All visitors report to assembly point G. All staff report to their designated assembly point. Do not leave the assembly point for any reason until told to do so by the incident controller or the fire brigade officer. Thank you. And we haven't got a scheduled fire drill, so if the alarm goes off, it's we really need to get out. So agenda item 2, any apologies for absence, members aware of official council business? I've got Councillor Lee's apologies and substitute Councillor David Wright.
Yeah, unfortunately, Councillor Denise Clues forgot to ring Councillor Moss. So that's why he isn't here.
Ah, okay. Okay, we'll
We get that deleted.
thank you. Right, we'll sort that out. Agenda item 3, disclosable non-pecuniary and pecuniary interests. Thank you very much. And agenda item 4, the minutes of the Resources Board held on the 8th of November. Move.
Second.
Thank you. All in favour? No, thank you. That means I can sign those. There. Thank you very much. Agenda item 5, public participation. Well, we're overwhelmed with members of the public, as you can see, so we'll move on from that up to agenda item 6, which is Shuttington Wildflower Meadow. Okay, so the recommendation to the board this evening is that we note the use of the Chief Executive's urgent business powers to grant a licence to Shuttington Parish Council. So, is there any questions on that? Councillor Mawson.
Just move it.
Thank you. Councillor.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Do we have a definition of the word urgent?
Well, I can get my dictionary out for you.
Urgent.
I know. I think there's been some time span that's caused some issues there. So I think that it was quite important that those powers were used.
A bit more expedited. Can I just say,
yes, Councillor Humphreys.
It is a shame really, because the county put money into it. It was all going to happen. Contractors come in, killed all the grass, and then took it all off while we were still sorting out needing a licence, and then it stopped. And unfortunately now contractors can't come back to do it until the next time they need to do it, which is September. So it's a shame, a year delay. Thank you.
So, well, if we haven't got any other questions on that, I'll move that from the chair.
I just moved it.
Oh, sorry, yes, we did. Councillor Sir Humphreys.
No, I thought I preempted you to say vote for. Sorry.
Do I have a second?
Oh, sorry.
Councillor Simpson. So that's moved by Councillor Mawson, seconded by Councillor Simpson. All in favour? That's unanimous. Thank you. Moving on to agenda item 7, which is the general fund fees and charges. The recommendation for the board tonight is that we accept the schedule of fees and charges for 2022-23 as set out in the report. Are there any questions on that report? Councillor Simpson.
Thank you, Chairman. I'd just like to be clear that on all of these fees and charges, that none of them are set at a level which generates a loss for the authority.
I'll just pass that over to Director of Resources, Sue.
I don't think so, Chair. I mean, some of these we don't get a great deal of interest in anyway. Not many people are interested in our accounts, unfortunately.
So I'm happy to move it, Chairman. I'm just, the provision of CCTV images to third parties, 69.80 an hour, and we take everything into account. That sounds reasonable. But with request taking over 1 hour, he's only set at about 2 hours. Is that right?
Well,
Are we covering our costs if it, for example, takes 3 hours?
want to answer that, Sue?
Chair, I can't honestly say yes or no. I don't believe we get that many requests. And I believe that we would look at charges if we thought it was going to be a long request. And we would take that into account in setting any fees and charges. But I can certainly clarify that with the Director of Housing.
Thank you.
I'm comfortable with the answer yes and then no, Chair.
Thank you. Are there any more questions on agenda item 7? No, if not, then I'll move that from the chair. Do I have a second? Councillor Wright, all in favour? 1, 2, 3, 4. And against? Any abstentions? That's 4. So that's carried. Thank you. Moving on to agenda item 8, which is the general fund revenue estimates. Services recharged across all boards. The recommendation to our board this evening is to accept the revised budget 21-22 and accept or otherwise vary the estimates of expenditure 22-23. Any questions on agenda item 8? Thank you. That's been moved by Councillor Wright, seconded by Councillor Simpson. All in favour? Thank you. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And against? Any abstentions? That's 4. So that's carried. Thank you very much. And then if we move to agenda item 9, the general fund revenue estimates services remain within the board. Again, the recommendation is to accept the revised budget. Are there any questions on agenda item 9? Councillor Simpson.
Thank you. It's just on item 331, 311.1, similar issues. Where are we with this generality at the moment in terms of debt recovery action? I remember last year we had a similar issue where we had an under collection on budget because the IT system wasn't working properly. So my question is in 2 parts. Where are we at now with regard to, if you like, catching up on the work that was missed because the IT system didn't work or we didn't know how to use it? And where are we up to on this year's council tax and rent allowance issue? Because I really don't understand why COVID would have made an impact of what looks like 240,000 quid.
Well, we can see from the 3.3.1 that recovery action has now recommenced. But in terms of how we've caught up, Sue, do you want to answer that?
Yes, Chair. Yes, the system issues have certainly been sorted out. But unfortunately, during the COVID period, there was a bit of a moratorium on debt recovery generally, and that did extend, I think, a little bit with the extension of the pandemic. But we have taken the view now that debt recovery is now appropriate to commence, and we are in full throes, if you like, of sending out reminders and really chasing up the debt. So we are hopeful we will now start to catch up, but it will be quite a bit of work involved in that.
And just to follow on from that then, is there an increase in provision for bad debts in the revised estimates?
We haven't revised the bad debt provision as yet, Chair. That will come when we close the accounts, when we hopefully will have a better position of how the recovery action to date has gone. But certainly we will take any increase in arrears into account in setting the provision.
Councillor Simpson.
Thank you. Just two parts again. I absolutely am relieved to hear that the IT systems are working fully, but my question was more, what are we doing about the under recovery from that year? Is that still the amount it was, or is that changed from what was reported this time last year? And secondly, I do recall there was a moratorium on sending the bailiffs. I don't recall there was a moratorium on sending out reminders.
Chair, yeah, we probably didn't send out reminders to the extent we possibly could have, because we couldn't then take it through to the court procedure that we would normally follow. We are trying to catch up on previous years also. I don't have the specific breakdown of past year's arrears to hand on that.
Is that something you could share with us, sort of where we are against last year's arrears, and then what the size of the gap is now that we're trying to close at the moment? That'd be useful information.
It certainly would, Chair.
Thank you. Any further questions on agenda item 9?
Move recommendation, Chair.
Thank you. Do I have a second? Thank you, Councillor Humphreys. All those in favour? And against? And abstentions? So that's carried. Thank you. Moving on to agenda item 1, which is the general fund estimates 2023 summary. The recommendation is that the revised budget for 21-22 is accepted, and to approve the schedule of expenditure requirements totalling 8,652 for 2022-23. Are there any questions on agenda item 10?
Move recommendation, Chair.
Thank you. Do you have a second? Councillor Tony Clues. Thank you. All in favour? Thank you. Abstentions? Against? Thank you. That's carried. And if we move to agenda item 11, housing revenue account. Estimates for 2022-23 and rent review. So the recommendations to the board this evening are A to G. There's a slight amendment on Appendix E, I believe, in relation to the rent from garages being applied. There's a slight typo in there that will need amending, but it's in the main recommendations. It's just following through into the report. There needs to be a slight amendment to one of the figures. On page 96 of 137. But any questions? Councillor Simpson.
Thank you, Chair. It's on item 5.5 and 5.5.1. I'm certainly not challenging the repayment of any debt and the additional repayment of any debt, but £10,000 does not strike me as a substantial amount of money. Could I have a bit more information behind what that is?
Chair, sorry, the £10,000 is the increase on debt. So I believe the debt being repaid is 2 million and yes, it goes from 2.25 million to 2.26 in the following years. So sorry, it's just a £10,000 increase on debt rather than just a single £10,000.
Sorry, I'm lost, Chairman. Can you say that again? So I understand.
So if you look at, is that table on 11.5?
I was going to say it's probably as clearly seen, Chair, if I may suggest, on Appendix A on page 93. If you can go about halfway down onto the debt management page.
Sorry, Chair. Sorry, say again.
Appendix A, page 93. If you go about halfway down where we've got the debt management section, there is a revenue set aside as per business plan. And you'll see in 2020 21-22, we're looking to repay £2.25 million. In 22-23, we're looking to repay £2.26 million.
I'm much happier, Chairman, but I do think that 5.5.1 is misleading.
Okay. Maybe we could reference the appendix in there so it can be seen on the line to actually see that it's what it's referring to. Because when you look at Appendix A, it's really clear, isn't it?
It is.
Thank you. Are there any other questions on agenda item 11?
Move, Chair.
Thank you.
Second,
Thank you, Councillor Simpson. So that's been moved and seconded. All in favour? Thank you. Abstentions? And against? That's carried. Thank you. Moving on to agenda item 12, which is the capital programme for 21-22. Recommendation to support the changes to the 21-22 revised capital programme and the proposed 3-year capital programme, which includes our growth bids and the proposed vehicle repair. Are there any questions on that from the board?
Move.
Thank you. It's been moved by Councillor Wright. Councillor Humphries.
Seconded.
It's been seconded. All those in favour? Bless you. Thank you. Against? Abstentions? Thank you. It's carried. Moving on to agenda item 13, which is the Treasury Management Strategy. So our recommendation this evening is just that the proposed strategies for 22-23 be approved. Are there any questions on that? Thank you, Councillor Wright. Moved. Do I have a second? Councillor Humphries, thank you. All those in favour? Thank you. Against? Abstentions? Thank you. That's carried. Thank you very much. Moving on to agenda item 14, which is the Aston Public Conveniences. Recommendation to our board this evening is that members agree to the permanent closure of the public conveniences with effect from April 22. And that from that date that the site is declared surplus to requirements and that the corporate director Streetscape be given delegated authority to dispose of the site once the conveniences have been permanently closed. Do I have any questions on agenda item 14? Councillor Jennings.
It's not so much a question as a statement, really. Yeah, I really think that we should have public toilets next to the station in Atherstone. I accept that they are very expensive and we can't afford them, and everybody else in the borough has already lost theirs. So, you know, it's difficult to argue against losing them. But I think what we do need to do is to make sure that systems are put in, signage is put in, so that people know where to find available toilets. And I think that we need to make every effort to check that the places that we are sending people are actually happy for people to be sent to them. You know, there are various businesses in the town that are mentioned here. Has anybody actually talked to them to check that they are happy with it? And if they have, you know, as I say, I think we really do need to have good signage to direct people to those, and we need to try and make sure that the standard of provision for disabled people who would need a little bit more space, perhaps changing area, are available somewhere. Not aware that they are in this building, and that seems to be one of the main places that we are talking about sending people.
Okay. Thank you. Councillor Close.
Thank you, Chair. As a local council, it is disappointing but when you read that it costs £15 per visit, and you've got to sit here and realise that every person in North Warwickshire pays precept, and that precept and the money out of their precept is paying for these toilets to be, looked after at the minute. So if the recommendation does go through tonight, what I would like, Chair, is better signage to tell people where there is alternative toilets. I mean, before COVID, I know people used to nip into the local hairdressers, they'd nip into the Red Lion, they'd nip into where. That's not happening anymore, because obviously they don't want people that's not in their shops or not in their restaurants nipping into the toilets. So I would like just the added recommendation that, if these toilets are to go, that there is better signage to sign them, as it states in the paper. We've got a toilet here, we've got a toilet at the swimming baths. Thank you, Chair.
Can I just add that I think that is really important, because we need to have the signage there for people outside of shop hours and things. We are already hearing reports of areas of the town being used as toilets that are not.
No, I don't think anyone wants that.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Sorry, Chair, just coming back on that, I also think that when these are shut, that obviously we need to let the bus transport people know, because.
Yes, that's a really important point. Thank you.
And I think we need to try and make sure that something goes in there that is a credit to the town, improves the general area, but it doesn't just become a sort of waste.
Yeah, no, I quite agree with that. Can I just ask you, so when public conveniences were closed in other areas of the borough, the council staff went and spoke to a lot of shopkeepers, restaurants, cafes, that sort of thing, about the use of facilities, town hall being one of them. And I know that council staff went and did that, but given that, we've been through this period of COVID with people not necessarily always being in the office or being able to go out to places, has that same activity happened?
Chair, I would expect it to, but I'm afraid I can't confirm that. I'm not absolutely sure.
We've got Richard on the online. I don't know whether or not he's aware of that.
Thank you, Chair. We haven't spoken to any of the local businesses yet, but clearly, if the decision goes through tonight, that's one of the first things we will do, because we are acutely aware of this issue of signage and making sure that people are aware of what the alternatives are. It would obviously be impossible to list every single toilet that might be accessible, but clearly, if there are certain outlets that will allow members of the public to go in, then I think it's only right that we recognise that. We've looked, as you said previously, at community convenience schemes. They haven't gathered any traction in terms of people being willing to sign up to an official scheme, but we will certainly talk to anybody and everybody and try and get a directory together of alternative locations that we can promote.
Thank you. I think that's most important, particularly for the bus drivers there and the people who are sort of stopping in and maybe waiting for a sort of time. So that would be really useful. Thank you. Councillor Mawson.
Just referring to what Richard said there, will that be done first before we close the toilets? Or are we going to close it then? Talk to them.
I think, as he's just said there, said if the decision is taken tonight, then that's the catalyst to go and speak to people before the April proposed date. It's if the decision isn't taken to do that tonight, then there's not anything to go and talk to them necessarily about, potentially.
So bring it back to this next meeting, this committee, what the result is.
Well, I think that the one of the things as part of the recommendation is that is delegated authority, to the streets director, the corporate director. So, if we want information to come back, then we could ask, Richard to do a report based on, on that activity. Should we make this decision this evening? Yeah, are you quite happy with that, Richard? He's nodding. Councillor Clues.
So Richard, sorry, thank you, Chair. For Richard, really, on 6.4.2, you've got, if the council decides to dispose of the public convenience, it must seek to obtain the best consideration which can reasonably be obtained. I won't tell you more. What consideration are you doing once we make that, if we make that decision tonight for the toilets? What have you put in place should the toilets be closed? for future. Do you know what I mean? Although a building of this value, there is a general consent which would allow disposal of an undervalue. So what are your plans from here on? Should we decide we're going to close it?
Through you, Chair, I think the point of that is that I think because of the nature of the land and the site that's being disposed of, there won't be necessarily a commercial value for the site, and it depends on what alternative land uses are brought forward. And I think one of the members mentioned, the need for that site to be returned to something that's beneficial to the local community. So I think if you get offers on the site, I think members of this board will probably want to consider what those offers are in terms of both monetary value, but the alternative usage of the site. So I think, as we've spoken about before, I think when we do get interest in the land, we will bring that back to members of this board for their final consideration on exactly what they'd like to see done with that piece of land and what those offers are. And you may well wish to put more onus on the use of the land rather than necessarily the value or the receipt, the capital receipt that you get for it. So I think that's what 6.4.2 is referring to. That isn't necessarily monetary value of the land, but social value of the site going forward. But we'll bring all that back to members once we've if you make the decision, once we've been out to see what the interest in that site might be. I hope that answers the question, Chair.
Councillor Clues?
Yeah, that's fine, thank you.
Councillor Simpson?
Thank you, and I can't honestly say at the top of my head I have a great deal of view over what this could be useful, but I know what I don't want it to be useful. I don't want it to become an eyesore ordered at former Kazi. These things will look awful. This isn't exactly part of the levelling up agenda or the not sitting down agenda. But across from here, we're going to have the world's worst mural. And I would hate this to become another mural, because one is going to be bad enough and a big enough waste of public money as it is. The other thing I'd make a comment on is, you can put as much signage in as you like. People will still behave badly. We don't have any signage in my ward because we never had any public toilets. But that doesn't stop people using the A446 as the longest public toilet in the borough as it is. And so people will always misbehave with this. We do have a broader issue over, I'm not trying to say this is all lorry drivers, but around bits of Hamshall on the A446 of people using the public highway as a public toilet. And I think we need a broader policy over what we're actually going to do to stop this appalling public misuse.
I quite agree with you. I understand. I know exactly what you're talking about in terms of the ward, and I've been employed there myself and witnessed certain things which have been most unpleasant. So I absolutely know what you mean. But I think coming back to the Aston public conveniences, I think we've had all of the questions that we're going to get on that. So do I have anyone proposing the motion?
Move.
Councillor Wright
No, seconded.
and Councillor Clues seconded there. So all those in favour of the recommendation? Thank you. And against the recommendation? 3. That's carried. Any abstentions? I didn't see them. I haven't voted no. Thank you. Well, that's carried. Thank you. And I'm sure we'll get some reports back from Richard with regard to those other points made tonight. Okay, then we've got agenda item number 15, which is the appointment of a control representative. So the recommendation to the board tonight that members nominate a representative to sit on the joint committee of control. Obviously, following implementation of civil parking, our tribunal service for traffic penalties will be different. And so therefore we need to nominate a member representative. Councillor Wright.
Proposing Councillor Denise Clues is our representative.
Thank you. Do I have a second for that, or any alternative nominations?
I'll second it.
Thank you,
I was
Councillor
going to
Simpson.
also nominate Councillor David Humphries as well.
Well, actually, I'm not certain if I need a representative, because it's an a representative or multiples.
Well, obviously,
So
otherwise-
I'll take my guidance there from Richard Dobbs.
I think one will be sufficient, Chair. Probably more than sufficient, but one will be sufficient.
Will be absent.
That's good.
I'm sure you can nominate a substitute. I don't think that's against the rules. So if you want to have a long list of councillors queuing up to sit on this particular subcommittee, that's fine by me.
Lots of appetite for that role. Okay, so.
You've said enough, Richard.
All your past your car.
I don't drive, so I ain't going to get no parking tickets now.
That wouldn't look good.
No, so at least you're patrolling that from a clean slate. Not like me. Anyway, so we've got a nomination and a second for Denise Clues. So we have all those in favour? Okay, any against? Any abstentions? Okay, so but that's carried.
That's in case they all get a parking ticket.
I'm in 4. I don't drive.
So that's Denise nominated for that position there. Thank you. Thank
Do you
you.
want to nominate a substitute?
I think, do we need to nominate a substitute? I think that
Richard said
Richard said that we just could substitute the role as a member, so it can be.
anybody.
Yes, well done, Peter.
So we'll take you as, we'll put you on the list, yeah?
I think you know the answer to that.
I think you'd ever be that routine.
No, I wouldn't.
Right, so moving on to agenda item 16, the exclusion of press and public.
Move.
Thank you. It's been moved by councillor Mawson, seconded by councillor Humphries. All those in favour? It's carried. Thank you very much. So our recommendation is to consider whether in accordance with section 100A of the Local Government Act, the public and press exclude. I've got to say this before she turns it off.
Yeah, can take a point on that.
On the grounds that it involves the likely disclosure of exempt information classified by Schedule 12A of the Act. And by reading that, it gives Julie enough time to go from point A to point B in the room and then turn off our live broadcast before we move out right into private.
Right, she'll get bonus